Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Inspired by the culture and spirit of New Orleans, the contemporary abstract and figurative work of Tony Mose and the urban expressionist art and jewelry of Tracy Mose are now on display and available at Esom Art Galleries. Esom Art Galleries are artist-owned and are located in Uptown New Orleans on Magazine Street and on Royal Street in the heart of the French Quarter. Esom Art Galleries, inspiration from the soul of New Orleans.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. What a glorious day it is in the Crescent City today. And I can't wait for this week because so much action is happening in New Orleans sports and music as well. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But how about tomorrow? The NBA season starts tonight, but not the Pelicans. It's the Lakers-Nuggets. That's the big game tonight. Obviously, the Nuggets are defending champions. Lakers with LeBron, Anthony Davis. They've got a nice supporting cast. That's going to be fun. But tomorrow, the Pelicans go to Memphis for that opener, a very tough place to play. You know, Memphis had a great season last year, but let me say this. They have no Ja Morant. He's out 25 games. No Steven Adams. Remember the big center that used to be here. So he's out. So this is a big chance to get that first win off the bat in Memphis. You got a home game against a very good Knicks team. New York Knicks, you know, they've been a laughingstock for a few years, but they play great basketball now. That's a team that's fun to watch. That game is going to be the opener at home on Saturday. Hey, moving forward, let's talk a little baseball. Because last night, Texas Rangers did something I never thought that would happen. 7 games, 7 road teams won each game, and they had to win 2 in Houston, and they capped it last night with a big win. You see Adalis Garcia right there, what a series he had. He had a hit in 6 straight consecutive games. That's never happened. How about this? He had 2 home runs. He went 4 for 4. He is the MVP. Congratulations to Texas. The only other time they were in was 2011 when they got shell-shocked by the Giants. Hey, moving forward, how about the Phillies and D-backs? That's Game 7 tonight. This is the Phillies' first ever Game 7. The Diamondbacks just won't go away. So that'll be tonight at 7 o'clock. As far as college football, LSU has a bye. They beat Army 62-0. This offense is fine-tuned and rolling, and they look great. But they have a bye. They'll play Alabama. We're going to talk a lot about that next week. That's going to be the game to decide a possible chance to move forward to a possible national championship. That's right. I said it. We'll talk more about that later. Tulane and Rice. Give Tulane their due, everybody. They're playing great. They just beat North Texas. They go to Rice. Scary game. That team had beat Houston earlier in the year. Look out. They have JT Daniels, who was the #1 quarterback coming out of college. Even though this is his 4th team, they're very good. And the Saints, we don't need to belabor the point. We know what happened at Jacksonville, but here's the kicker. They looked good in the second half. They looked exciting. If they can parlay that, they have a good chance to beat the Colts on the road because that team is playing much better than people expected. That game will be Sunday at noon. Hey, John Papa Gros. That's right, one of the greatest musicians in New Orleans history. That's right. He's coming up next after Fletcher Mackel and then a little bit of Mintz. It's going to be a fun show tonight on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. It is that time of year. The World Series is right around the corner. We had Scott Sanders last week, former Major League pitcher. He broke it down. And the team he was rooting for won last night, the Texas Rangers. But we have to figure out who's going to be on the National League side with the Arizona Diamondbacks and, of course, the Philadelphia Phillies. Hey, but moving forward, this is a show we want to talk basketball because the Pels start their season tomorrow night. The Saints, well, they're struggling. They have a 2-game losing streak, as we mentioned in the open. But how about those Tigers and the Green Wave? They're doing great right now. And Nichols down there in the Southland Conference is undefeated right now. But let's go to the guy we love, Fletcher Mackel from WDSU. the pride of De La Salle. What's up, my man?
I thought you're the pride of De La Salle.
How you doing? Way long ago. There's no pride on this end, but how you been, man?
Good. Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
I got to congratulate you. You got the Olympic nod.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big deal, man. You're going to Paris. You're going to be one of the guys. And I was just talking to Brando about it, and he said this is a great year because they have a lot of eyeballs on this one for whatever reason, and they're hiring a lot of good people. So how do you feel about that?
Amazing, kind of the opportunity of a lifetime. My brother, who also works at WDSU, got to go to Rio in 2016, and then he went to South Korea in 2018.
Yeah.
And so I was hoping I would get to go eventually, because he told me it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Yeah,
he said it's a lot of work. You know, it's like 24 days because you go up a week early, and it's nonstop. But he goes, you're there and you're in it, and you get to experience everything. So yeah, I was kind of excited. I joked with some of the people that picked me because I'd been asking and kind of, hinting that I would love to go.
Right.
And so you got Paris in 24, and then it's Milan Cortina for the Winter Olympics in 2026, which would be great.
Yes.
And then it goes to LA. And so I joked with my brother, not to sound like doom and gloom, I go, you know what? The year I get picked, it's going to be LA, where I've been like a dozen times before. But no, when one of my bosses from New York called and told me, I kind of got emotional because I thought, what an amazing experience.
It's
Paris,
a big deal.
Yeah, Paris in 24, getting to go to the Olympics. And you're right, after the last two, which have been, 2020 in Tokyo was pushed to 21.
Right.
It was postponed an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And then covering it, nobody could really do it. You had to have those COVID hotels for 2 weeks. And then even in Beijing, in 22, they were still dealing with a lot of COVID issues. So this is kind of going to be the first Olympics post-COVID. So I do think it's going to be one of the more special ones.
So I've never been in front of the scenes. I've always been, in 96, obviously I lived in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I was part of the crew that was doing the World Games. The Olympic, the whole feat over there for the Dream Team 2. I worked basketball only, Paralympics as well. But then 2000 was the only time I got away and went to Sydney. So what's your role going to be exactly for the Olympics?
So I'll be doing stories the week before and then all throughout the games on a variety of topics leading up, Paris, security in flavor of the city, and kind of how they're handling it. And it's the 100-year anniversary. They had the games in 1924, and so they're going to have it in 2024. Right. So the build up the week of is banking stories that are kind of what they call flavor of the city stories.
Sure.
And then once the game starts, it becomes any news of the day, kind of in a rotation with other reporters of what's happening, what are the big stories, what's going on. My brother got, when Ryan Lochte got in trouble in Brazil,
yes.
It was one of those things kind of like, great, we're sending 6 crews to cover that in every different angle. And so basically once the games start, it could be good stories, bad stories, heartbreak, triumph, newsworthy headlines. And so they just said, be ready for anything.
Well, I don't know what city in the world might have more flavor in it than Paris, so congratulations. Good luck to that one.
Thanks.
Hey, moving on, I want to start with the Pelicans because they start tomorrow, and I know you're a big basketball guy, as I am. There's such uncertainty with this team, and I go across the board. I get a kind of a litmus test to people I know when I travel on the road, and they tell me what they think. And first thing they think right away is like, are they going to be healthy? I get this question every single time because we don't even know, really. We think we know, but the law of averages says that, hey, maybe they'll shine some goodness on us and have a healthy season. But if they do that, what's the next step for the Pelicans?
So here's the thing. I look at it and say you're 100% right. One, the West is just insane again. I mean, there's to me, I look at like 11 or 12 teams that I could legitimately say could finish in the top 4 or could miss the play-in altogether.
100. And let's say this, Denver Nuggets, they can say what they want. No one was talking about them winning the title this time last year.
No, I mean, look, they were good. They made the playoffs, but were they ready to be that team that could do something in the postseason? They dealt with injury issues with Jamal Murray, with Michael Porter Jr. Yep. Look, Jokic is a bear and plays 70 games a season, but the guys around him had injury issues and they had to put the pieces together. And once they put the pieces together, they ascended to a championship. And I think Mike Malone's a really good coach. But if this team stays healthy, they showed us last year. They ascended to 1 in the West. They were a top 3 team when B.I. got hurt and then Zion went down, and then they went sideways. I'm not saying they're winning a championship if they can stay healthy, but if they can stay healthy, I always tell people this. Zion isn't a perennial all-star. Zion is a perennial MVP. He is just like Giannis, Jokic,
He's in the conversation, yes.
Luka, if he stays healthy. The problem is, in 4 years, he averages 29 games a season. He's had one healthy season in 4 years. So if he stays healthy, and if Ingram stays healthy, I really think, look, I've covered this since I started working at WDSU when the NBA relocated back here in 2002.
Yeah.
I have covered some bad teams,
Yes,
18 and 64 in 04-05. Some talentless teams that you knew didn't have a chance. This is not one of them. This is a talented team with stars, high-level role players, young players, a really, really good coaching staff. They have all the ingredients to make a deep run in the playoffs, but it does come down to health. I mean, that to me is the biggest key, is if Zion plays 70 of 82,
wow,
I think
that would be something.
I think they got to check. And look, you just said it, the law of averages. I'm not saying Zion's going to figure it out and stay healthy for 5 straight seasons, but I do think at some point he stays healthy for one season and is in the top 3 in the MVP, and they make a deep run in the playoffs. Maybe it's this year.
People forget, you're right, that they were in first place around Christmas, maybe a little before, I don't know, when they were on the roll, and all of a sudden, even without Brandon Ingram, right, most of that time. And then, obviously, he got healthy and Zion went out. But I'm looking forward to the possibility. I know this is a broken record, but C.J. McCollum is the perfect leader. They've got the role players. What's the latest with the injuries and guys like Trey coming back?
Yeah, so yesterday at practice, Willie Green said, obviously, Trey Murphy. That's a big, that's
a huge piece.
Yeah,
huge
one big
piece.
question to them, because he was a player that people were talking about is a burgeoning star in the league.
I agree.
You know, a 6'10" wing who is a knockdown shooter, who gets to the rim, who hustles on defense. Like, I love Trey Murphy. Like, I thought he should be starting in front of Herb Jones.
His ascension from year 1 to year 2 was remarkable.
Oh, and I still think he's going to take a step, but it's a setback for them. So shooting is a concern for the Pelicans. So obviously Trey's probably not going to be back for the first month of the season, maybe a little longer than that, like into December. He said that he believes, Willie Green said he believes Larry Nance is going to play, which is a nice bonus for them, because I do think he's that kind of bouncy, versatile big man that they definitely need.
Yeah.
But Jose Alvarado isn't likely to play. And there was one more injury update that I can't even.
For how you're talking about just in the beginning of the season?
In the beginning of the season,
right,
Jose Alvarado isn't ready to go.
Right.
Larry is.
You
Trey
made him
isn't.
famous at Mardi Gras 2 years ago.
I know.
He wore the Jose Alvarado jersey, and I barely knew who the guy was.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
he took off
him every day. Right.
Right. It was crazy. Like the 2 rookies, Herb Jones and Jose Alvarado, and the Pelicans gave us their uniforms, and people were like, "Who is that guy?" And literally that was when he was starting to get some minutes.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they're cheering Jose, Jose. He came out.
I know, and Metter yelled.
It was crazy.
Like the Mardi Gras,
yeah.
Called. Hey, let's move on to the Saints, and I don't want to stay in a ton of time because this is a broken record, but they just seem, in my mind, obviously we're so used to Drew and the winning, but they just don't have that it factor yet. And I think they can still get it. I mean, you see what Kamara's doing. You know, he's got, 29 touches last game. That's a lot of touches. But if that's the only guy producing, maybe you need to give it to him. But what's the problem in your mind?
So I could go, like I said, with the Pelicans. I could go 2 ways. I could sell myself on the Pelicans being the number 1, 2, or 3 seed in the West. I could also sell the Pelicans on being a play-in or missing the playoffs team, and I just don't know. I think it could go either way. I could sell myself on the Saints being a lot like Detroit last year. Detroit struggled last year. The offensive coordinator was new last year. And then it clicked for them at the end of the season. They won like 6 or 7 straight games. They were the hottest team at the end of the season. And then this year they look like a real force in the NFC. Maybe we are a lot closer to Derek Carr finally finding some synergy in Pete Carmichael's system, getting on the same page with Kamara, Olave, Shaheed, Michael Thomas. Because it doesn't look that far off, but, J.T. O'Sullivan, who's a former Saints backup quarterback, did a breakdown this week. It's like the must-see video in New Orleans, and he eviscerated Carr in the offense, talking about how broken it is. He goes, there's moments where you see it, but there's moments where you just...
They don't look in sync.
They're bad.
Right.
So I think maybe they're close. Maybe they're...
The second half was encouraging.
It was. And there's moments where Carr is talented, and you see it come together. And then they showed a lot of grit and a lot of determination to stay the course. So that's why I think maybe they're a lot closer than people think. And they're about to start a winning streak right now with Indy, with the Bears, with Minnesota, with the Falcons. Like, they could go on a run here, and we're talking about a team, okay, they're going to get to 10-7 or 11-6 and win the division. But I could also see they are what they are. 7 games in, we keep saying, you just said it sounds like a broken record. How many times are we going to have to hear a commentator say, another miscommunication between Carr and his receivers? They're not on the same page.
Yes.
So maybe that's just what they are. Maybe they are a group that is going to be underachieving and never reach their potential and finish 8-9 this year and miss the playoffs because they just can't get it together.
I'm the eternal optimist. I hope it's not that. I think the second half, I'm gonna say this is a springboard to the rest of the season, because you're right. This season's made to be picked up. But, you know, we look at these other teams, they're looking at the Saints the same way. Oh, that's a possible win. We can get that one. Other than maybe Chicago, but then again, Chicago's on a 2-game win streak. So
right. I mean, here's the thing. The Saints are an underdog in
Right.
Indianapolis. Like, I don't think Indianapolis is very good. They're playing with their backup quarterback.
He's pretty good, though.
He is.
I mean,
He's fine. He's a good backup quarterback. But still, the Saints, with all that talent that they have, are an underdog, even at Indy, to that team. That just blows me away.
I mean, listen, I would have thought earlier in the year that the Saints would have been a 4-point favorite, but it wasn't surprising because I've watched Indy battle. That's one of those surprise teams I thought would be tanked out, and now they just got Jonathan Taylor. They're bringing him back, so that game is a big maybe in my mind. Let's move forward because we have two of the there's 133 D1 football teams, correct? New Orleans and Baton Rouge have 2 of the top 22, which to me is mind-blowing. I mean, this little area has 2 of them, and they're playing so well at the moment. You know, LSU lost those 2 very close games. Tulane just seems to be on a roll. Their schedule, granted, is a little easier than it's been in the past with some of the teams defecting away, but still, they played Ole Miss, and that score is not indicative of how that game went, because they had a chance to take the lead with 6 minutes to go before they didn't get that first down on that sideline thing. But your take on this season for both of them, let's just start with the Wave since we're right here.
Yeah, I mean, look, what Willie Fritz has built uptown is pretty remarkable. I mean, last year, the biggest turnaround in college football history, from 2-10 to 12-2 in the Cotton Bowl, and then to keep all those guys when Pratt could have left on a big NIL deal to go to a Power 5 to up his NFL status. Sincere Haynesworth could have left. I mean, to keep the guys they have and then to go out and recruit the portal, they did a great job of rebuilding that team and keeping the stars that they have. And so I think they're going to win out. I think they're going to end up winning the American. They're going to probably have to play SMU in the conference championship game, but they're going to be the favorites in the rest of their games. You know, Rice and Tulsa and Texas San Antonio. I think Tulane's going to win out. They're going to be 11-1 going into the conference championship against probably SMU. The biggest thing for Tulane is Air Force right now, who they don't play. Air Force is undefeated and 19th in the country. If Air Force wins out and wins the Mountain West, they're going to end up in the New Year's 6 game, which is going to kick Tulane to like the Fenway Bowl or the Liberty Bowl, which is still fine.
Explain that to people that don't know what you're talking about.
So the highest ranked non-Power 5 team.
Right.
So the highest ranked team outside of the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big 10 gets to go to what's called the New Year's 6 bowl game. You know, last year, the Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, sometimes the Sugar Bowl, the Rose Bowl. The Sugar and the Rose are playoff games this year.
Right.
So this year, it would be the Fiesta, the Cotton, the Peach Bowl, the Chick-fil-A Bowl, or the Orange Bowl. That's the New Year's, and then the other 2 are playoff games. So the New Year's 6 games, the big money, the old guard games, the big kind, those are the best bowl games.
Right.
Last year, Tulane got USC. If Tulane was the highest ranked team outside the Power 5, they would probably end up in, I would say, the Peach Bowl or the Orange Bowl. But if Air Force is the highest ranked non-Power 5 team, they'll probably end up in the Fiesta Bowl, which would kick Tulane to a lesser bowl game.
Everybody here in New Orleans needs to root against Air Force.
I know.
Which is sad. You don't want to root against the military.
Right. But nonetheless, that's what could happen. But let me say this. Tulane could still win out. Air Force could lose. Tulane could end up in the Orange Bowl against North Carolina or against Miami or against Florida State if they lose. And can you imagine Cotton Bowl one year, Orange Bowl the next year for Tulane? Who would have thought that was possible 10 years ago?
Think about it. I mean, if they do win out, as you say, they'd be 23-3 going into the championship game against whoever they might play SMU. That's mind-blowing to me, especially when you're talking about 2-10 the year before. That's a great turnaround, and I'm so glad they kept Fritz. LSU. Now, this is an interesting story because I was talking to an Alabama person this week, and you know Alabama, they're like talking about LSU's definitely out of it, and I said, well, I said, you know, I'm going to say this. I think they control their own destiny. And the guys, an older man, so I didn't want to challenge him a little bit. But he said, no, you're wrong, son. And I said, okay. I said, well, they got Georgia. If they do win the title, they have to play Alabama, of course, beat them, and and win out. And that's not going to be easy, but it's possible. And with this offense, I think they can almost outscore anybody. It's just a matter if the defense continues to mature.
Yeah, and so LSU does mostly control their own fate. So the one linchpin in that is Ole Miss. Ole Miss technically
has to lose one.
And they play Georgia, though. So Ole Miss has Georgia in the regular season. So I think everybody looks at it and says, well, look, Georgia's going to beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss is the only team that technically in the SEC West controls its own fate.
Right.
Because so if they win out and beat Georgia and then, get to potentially a rematch with Georgia in the SEC championship.
Georgia hasn't lost in a long time.
Right. But let's just assume that Ole Miss loses to Georgia.
Right.
Well, then the winner of LSU Alabama is going to end up more than likely in the SEC championship game. That produces a situation just like last year. LSU will probably be, the winner of LSU Alabama will more than likely be in the SEC championship game against Georgia. And remember last year, LSU was at 5. If they could have beaten Georgia 1, they're in the playoffs.
Right on.
If LSU's 15. If they beat Bama, they're probably going to get into the top 10. And if they get to the SEC championship game against number 1 Georgia and win, they'll get into the playoffs. That's the path for LSU. Beat Bama, and then get to the SEC championship game and then maybe pull off an upset.
Next year, for those that don't know, it'll be all moot because if they are this good, they're going to go because there's going to be 12 teams.
Sure.
And it's going to be a whole different thing. But with 4, I think there's a good chance, honestly. I mean, obviously, Georgia have to beat Ole Miss and you have to beat Alabama and not slip up in the other games. But I watched Georgia, and they're not the same team. They haven't lost, by the way, since 2021, and that was only one time in the SEC championship to Alabama. So that team's on a roll, but they don't have a lot of the same pieces. They've been reloading, but they've been putting number 1 picks into the NFL frequently the last 3 or 4 years. If that were a matchup, have you seen enough of Georgia to see if LSU can compete and win that game?
I mean, look, sure. Could LSU beat them? Sure. But I thought Kentucky was the one that was going to give Georgia the run. Kentucky went in undefeated. Everybody said maybe this is the year that Georgia's not Georgia. Right. And then Georgia, I think, beat Kentucky 52 to 17.
They did that to Tennessee last year.
And so here's the thing. And we were talking about LSU being hot, LSU on a roll, LSU going into the SEC championship game. Maybe they can pull off the upset. And Georgia just, it was like 34.
Different team.
It is, but still.
They've been starting for 5 years.
I agree. And Georgia's played around with some teams and kept them close and had to pull away late. So that is you look at and you say maybe there's an opportunity to get in there. But until somebody does it, I'm still picking Georgia to win the SEC.
No, why not? They are there. And listen, let me say this. That team is the most consistent I've seen. They have some. They almost lose a couple games every year, and this year's no different. But when it matters, they always pull it out. But hopefully LSU can change that. Do you think Brian Kelly's the man for the future?
Yeah, I think without question. I mean, look, he's a great coach. He's doing some great things. Jaden Daniels is going to be a Heisman finalist. I think Brian Kelly's a really good coach, yeah.
Were you at all doubtful about that when he got hired?
No, I thought it was a good hire.
Right
I
away
thought
off the bat?
Look, I know we got to wrap it up here. College sports to me is crazy because everybody's chasing Saban and the salaries these guys get is crazy to me. Yeah. But I think LSU getting Brian Kelly, they couldn't have had a smarter, safer, better pick. Like for some of the wild cards that got $10 million a year, Mel Tucker is out at Michigan State.
I have to be there next week. And
Jimbo is the same as Kevin Sumlin or worse right now at A&M. Like Lane Kiffin's never going to win anything at Ole Miss. If you're going to pay a coach $10 million, it may as well be Brian Kelly because I think he at least has a chance to win a national championship.
Appreciate you, my friend. Always, man. Hey, we added Mr. John's Steakhouse along with Shays Delachey's, and there you go for that one. And then
come see Desi. I'm coming to see Desi.
Desi Vega and Archie Rodenkirk too.
Yeah,
you got to check out my man Archie.
Archie's a big basketball guy.
He is the guy over there too. Listen, I got to give Archie some props. Anytime you want anything at Mr. John's, call them and ask for Archie because he always gets it done. Fletcher. Task performance, you have a couple of those?
I've been on the show. I jog in nothing but these. They just had their warehouse sale, so I did go and load up, too.
Did they really?
Yeah, it was great stuff.
They didn't tell me about that.
It was awesome.
All right, Fletcher, appreciate you. That is your update for all the local sports. Hey, we're going to switch to music because this is a sports and entertainment show, and I love that. We have a lot of musicians, and we have one coming that hasn't been since 2017. Where you been, John Papa Gros? He's coming up next right here on Primetime Sports.
Max Durbus Realtors has been providing commercial and industrial real estate services to its clients for nearly 100 years. Since 1934, Max Durbus has been locally owned and operated throughout the greater New Orleans area, including the North Shore, Hammond, and even the Mississippi Gulf Coast and beyond. We focus on your commercial real estate needs so you don't have to. More information is available at 504-733-4555.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports, and this is the entertainment part of the show. Not that sports isn't entertaining, but music certainly is. We all know it. We all love music one way or another, whether we love to play it, listen to it, and all genres. And I got to tell you, if you love happy music, if you like to be entertained, well, this guy, if you've not seen John Papa Gros, then you're missing out. You got to ask somebody and get out there and check him out because he's playing all over the place. He was on the show 6 years ago. He used to be with Papa Gros Funk. When I moved back to town about 11 years ago, they were playing over at the Maple Leaf all the time. And then he went out more solo now, and he's been doing a phenomenal job. He's the man on the keyboard, and here he is, John Papa Gros. What's up, my friend?
Where you at, Scott?
I love you sent the email, and I know you have to do it to other things. You're like, hey, just so you know, it's like Gros and silent S. I'm like, come on, man. Who are you talking to?
Well, I know you know, but a lot
Right.
of people out there, it's confusing, especially if you know dealing with people in the Midwest or other parts of the country. They don't necessarily understand the French connection.
The French connection. Let me
Yes.
say this. You have a joie de vivre about you. I mean, literally, I see you, I get happy. It's true. I mean, whether I'm pulling pictures for you or listening to some of the videos that you sent me some music, and also I just pull up stuff for research and listen. But whenever I see you in person right here, I saw you over there when Fletcher was doing the segment, and it just makes me happy. So how you doing?
I'm doing great. I've had my ups and downs in life, but we keep moving forward, and we live in the city of New Orleans, where it's the greatest city in the world, and there's all these great friends and family that we're surrounded by, and I play music, and I mean, there's no better career path than that. Life is good.
I'm gonna tell you, I was going through some of your stuff, and I went on some of your social media, and I was looking at some of the quotes, and some of them struck me. And I mean, I don't know, I pulled some, and I just wanted to start throwing a couple of them out because, yeah, when you say that, explain, because I love this. When you're playing music, you kind of escape all the realities.
Yeah, it's first I get inside of my head when I go on stage. It's almost like you think about Drew Brees when he's backing the quarterback,
right,
or any kind of professional athlete when say the game slows down,
sure,
and they see the field. So when I'm behind the piano or behind the organ, I'm on stage, and it doesn't matter if there's 10 people out there or 10,000 people out there. I know what my job is. And then I just see it. It's there. The music is there.
You go
the
into
songs
a zone?
are there. I go into the zone.
Right.
And the goal is like, okay, how do I get the rest of the band into my zone?
Yeah.
And then we connect, and then the audience gets into the zone, and all of a sudden this huge energy kind of just stews and boils, and then I can move it up and I can move it down, and by the end of the whole show, it's like this great energy, and we all go home feeling great.
You really, I mean, look, I don't know how you bring it every night because our music is meant to be experienced. Now, that if you into live music, that's the way it should be right there. So that needs no explanation. But you said something about New Orleans because I look at you as New Orleans, right?
Right.
Listen, I can't escape my accent. I go other places. I may have lost it for a little bit when I left for 20-something, 30 years. But people come in town, they go, oh, you're in New Orleans. And I say, I am proud of it. I love it. And you embody New Orleans music to me.
Yeah, well, it's, the thing about New Orleans, it's a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
You think about, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, the great classical composers. It was a time period, it was documented, and it's incredible music that should be played forever, but it's played almost identically as the piece of music says.
Right.
New Orleans music, when the Saints go marching in, you could hear me play it, you could hear Kermit Ruffins play it, you could hear Harry Connick Jr. play it, you can go down to Preservation Hall, you can go any player in town and hear it, and it's going to be different, and it's going to be of the moment, and it's going to be part of the celebration that's happening at that moment. And so it's living and breathing, it's always changing, just like a pot of gumbo or a bowl of red beans.
There you go, right there. How about that?
Did I just say the same thing right there?
We're going to keep that up for a second, just to let people know, because this is what it's all about. That is one that struck me, because when you're a New Orleans native, and I know you've probably experienced this because you're on the road a lot, when you're not there, and or especially if you move away in particular, you really miss this city. You really know what it means to miss New Orleans. We hate to use that way, but that's true, isn't it?
It's true. I mean, the best part about playing music all over the world is leaving to go do it.
Yeah.
And what's better than that is coming home.
Wow, that's a fact.
That is a fact.
Are you born and bred, everything? Tell me about your past here.
I was born right here in Mercy Hospital, Mid-City.
Right on.
My dad got his master's at LSU. We moved up to Baton Rouge. And so I lived in Baton Rouge pretty much from the time I was 5 years old till I graduated high school.
Right on.
And then I came back to New Orleans at Loyola and started college and been here ever since. Growing up, New Orleans really was like a second home because all my grandparents, all my cousins, aunts, and uncles, they were all here. So we would always come to town for all the family events.
I mean, listen, when I came back, and I would still come back and visit, and Maple Leaf was one of the spots. And you and Rebirth had weekly shows there early in the week, which is good. I would keep my weekend stay and not leave till Wednesday sometimes, so I could catch those Monday and Tuesday shows. I don't know, maybe it was Sunday as well. But the fact is when I think of, like, say, the Maple Leaf, which is like a New Orleans bar, I used to clean up the bar that used to be across the street. I used to live next door to Jed Palmer and Trevor Palmer, and they had Jed's, and that was on the corner of Dantee and Oak. I used to clean that up when I'm like 10, 11, 12, like that was the worst job ever, but we got to sit behind the bar and hear live music all the time. But when I think of Maple Leaf, I mean, honestly, in our era, I think of you, George Porter, guys like that, and I know George is a dear friend of yours. And I know y'all have collaborated on so many different things, and you talk about playing music with other people, and y'all all like telling a story. Talk about like that guy in particular, but in general about New Orleans musicians in general.
Well, George embodies. I mean, he's the epitome of what the greatest New Orleans musicians are.
The Meters bass, right?
Well, yeah, George Porter, the Meters. He's played with everybody, but he came up through the streets and learning by rote from the masters, who weren't necessarily the masters at the time, but they became the masters. So George has the utmost respect for the tradition and the history from, the trad jazz band players. He loves the tuba. He plays bass like a New Orleans tuba player.
Wow.
But he loves Fats Domino. Yeah. He loves, Lee Dorsey. He has so much respect for all the work that Alan Toussaint did. And then, of course, with the Meters, he got to experience and be a part of all of that. And then his legacy after the Meters is his own music and his own band. And he's taken, when I was younger, took me in, and he's been pretty much just one of the greatest learning institutions for New Orleans music is being a member of his band, because he doesn't like talk about the music, but when you're with him, but when you're playing on stage with him and he's behind his bass, it speaks volumes. It's such an incredible conversation because he changes it every night. You never know what's going to happen, even though you know all the music. He finds a way to say the same things over and over in a million different ways. And that's just the beautiful thing about him. And then what he did for me for my career is being in his band, he showed me, if I took New Orleans music seriously and got on board with that, he showed me where I could go in this world and what my life could be like. And I really tried. How
long ago was that?
I was with him from '96 to 2002, 7 years with him.
Wow.
8 years, and I pretty much emulate, everything that I learned from George, as did so many other great musicians like Mark Mullins of Bono Ramble. We all spent so much time, have so much respect, because he's the greatest teacher. I tell everybody, jokingly, but it's really true. It's like I got my music degree from Loyola University, bachelor's of music.
Great.
And I got my doctorate from George Porter Jr.
That's a good doctorate to have, right?
Absolutely.
I would say this, one of it, when he was in the meters, they have lots of greats, obviously Art Neville, etc. Leo Nocentelli, who was sitting right where you were just a few months back. I know you're doing a big thing on November 18th, correct?
Yes.
And we all love Dr. John, who passed away not that long ago. Legendary, one of the guys that continues the New Orleans tradition about putting us on the map around the world. And this is the Night Tripper, is Dr. John. If you don't know, we'll show you some pictures that'll explain that in a second. But you got Big Chief Monk Boudreaux, who also was recently here, and all these great musicians. But talk about this night, because Dr. John is one of my all-time favorites. I know a lot of people can say it, but I live it, and I love him. So talk about this night.
Well, absolutely. Dr. John, when you think about New Orleans music and the history of it and the most important parts of what New Orleans music has brought, how it was brought to the world, there was three people. There was Louis Armstrong, Fats Domino, and Dr. John were three figures that brought New Orleans music to the entire world.
100%.
And I remember as a kid, probably the first...
That's the Night Tripper right there.
One of the first songs I remember as a little boy was hearing Iko, his version on the streets during the Mardi Gras parades.
Oh my gosh.
And not really knowing too much about it, but then you start hearing that sound, and then, when Such a Night and Right Place, Wrong Time hit the radio, then it became even more popular. And then as I started diving into learning the music and being familiar with the records, hearing the Gree record and the sounds of Walk on Gilded Splinters, or They Call Me Dr. John, those sounds are just haunting. And then his record, the Gumbo record, that has all the classic New Orleans songs on it, Jungle Partner, Tipatina, Big Chief, Little Liza Jane, the Huey Piano Smith medley, just phenomenal stuff, and that kind of documents what New Orleans music is to me. And so then being a musician and finally getting to meet him and play with him and talk with him, and you just realize he's just one of us.
He's one of us, man.
And he just takes what we do here and brings it and highlights it to the world in such a unique way. His passing was left a big effect on me. Is like, well, his music's so important to me and everything that I'm about. I have to find my own way to carry that tradition on, carry his sound, his legacy, his message. And it's a big part of who I am as a performer and as a New Orleans musician. So this show
at Tipitina's, this has got to mean something to you.
It has to be.
I'm just so sad that I'm out of town because I work every weekend doing football games across the country. But this is one of these can't miss events, and I imagine it's got to be, if it's not sold out, it's got to be soon, because this is not a huge venue, but it's a legendary venue.
It's a legendary venue, and this night, and to have Leo Nocentelli, who recorded Right Place, Wrong Time, Such a Night. He was on the Right Place, Wrong Time record. He was on Desertilly Bonnaroo, recorded with Mac, played so many concerts and shows with him.
Mac Rebenek,
and Big Chief Monk Boudreaux and the whole Indian connection that Dr. John Mack had with Monk. They did so much work together. Monk would always show up, Dr. John would always show up at Monk's Indian practices. So there's a lot of legacy there.
Cool.
And then what's really cool is I think this may be the first time that John Full and David Berard, who both were his band members. John played guitar and David played bass. They're going to be on the show playing together, playing Dr. John's music. Oh my gosh, okay. So I think this will be the first time since his passing that they've actually played together. And of course we have Yolanda Robinson and Kiki Chapman, sisters from Solid Harmony, but they sang on a lot of his recordings and a lot of shows. So it's really Dr. John's family and the people he went to for to make his music special, along with my band, all coming together to celebrate his music. And we're gonna do the hits, and we got the deep cuts, got the horn section. It's gonna be a big. Do
you have any other thing? Because this is a big deal. But I mean, is this a one-time thing? I mean, is this ever gonna happen again?
The last time we did it was before the pandemic. So I've probably done 4 or 5 of these. But this is the first time
since he passed away
in 4 years.
Right. You got some other big stuff coming up, right?
I do. I have the last show I have of the year is going to be at Chickawawa. Just
love that
my
place.
Core band.
I love that place, by the way.
And it's small, and I haven't decided if I'm bringing the B3 and the piano in. Maybe I should.
They fixed Chickawawa up. Yes,
it sounds great in there.
Yes, it does.
Bring it all in there, and we're going to rattle the walls.
Just start driving and crying there, man. I mean, I love that place, and I was like, I've been there before, but I'm like, this feels different now, and it's like it's just a really nice venue.
It's a great listening room, and it's a great room to really, get the energy going in there. And so that's the last Saturday of the month, of the year, Saturday, December 30th.
That's going to be December 30th. That is the last day before New Year's Eve, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I have to ask you a question. You mentioned the three legends, right? Yeah, we all know Louis Armstrong. That's New Orleans. The other two play piano, and you play piano, right? I mean, Fats Domino, I want to bring him in because he passed away not long ago. When I think of a guy that represents New Orleans, I don't know if there's been any that does it better than Fats Domino. So does he have any influence on you?
Absolutely. So my father grew up on the West Bank.
Okay.
He played piano, played accordion, and in high school, he was kind of known as being the guy who could emulate Fats Domino at all the CYO dances, all the high school sock hops.
Yeah.
And so he would play that. And so when Frankie Ford had the break when he recorded Sea Cruise, left the band called the Syncopators, my dad stepped in and was the piano player for the Syncopators.
Is that where you learned?
Well, so my dad played music. He taught school during the day, he played music at night, so he would constantly, when he wanted to feel good at home, he would sit down and play Fats Domino music. So it was kind of funny for me because when I heard I Found My Thrill on Happy Days when Richie Cunningham would sing
That's
it,
the first time I heard it.
when I heard him sing, I go, he's singing my dad's song.
Oh, that's great. Because that's the first time I actually heard it really, honestly, and not even thought about it.
And then that was the door for Fats Domino. And then, when I'm studying.
Only people our age would get that.
Of course.
Happy Days reference right there.
But my dad knew the whole catalog.
Right.
And he would just play it at home. He would play it, he played professionally, but he would come home, and when he wanted to, feel better, I mean, whose music can make you feel the best? It's Fats Domino.
You're never going to admit this, you're too humble, but you're our version. I look at this lineage we have, and you make people happy when you play music. That's a fact. I mean, if you haven't seen the John Papa Gros show, you got to get out there. I mean, I'm stressing this because I have him on for a reason. He makes me happy when I get to go, and unfortunately in the fall I'm never around, but I cannot wait for January on forward. So hopefully you're not going to take too many breaks.
We'll have to do a Scott Alexander show in the spring. How about that?
There it is, baby. There it is. He's always playing the Jazz Fest, but we can't wait another 6 years. All right, we'll wait 6 months.
Perfect.
But that's about it, because I need to get you back, because Paul Sanchez has become a regular, and I got to get these local guys coming on, because it's going to be like Johnny Carson in the old days. For you young people like Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel, they bring the guys they love back a little more frequently, right? And we want to do the same. So there you are. Check them out. It's Gros.
Silent
Not to be
S.
confused
Yeah,
with anything else you might be thinking. It's French. So there you go. This is Shays de la Shays. I want you to bring your wife there on Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway. It's over there by the
Can't wait.
By the
awesome.
What's the Starbucks? Everybody knows that part. And then Task Performance. I'm gonna say this, man. Feel this? And you got the gunmetal.
Oh,
you got the Lucky Spin. That is the best material. I'm telling you. John, appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Scott.
There he is, one of our legends. He's living, and he's a legend. Get out there and check him out whenever you can. I don't know if there's tickets available for that one at Tipitina's, but I would run and get it right now because you're one of the first to hear it publicly. So I appreciate you. Thank you, buddy. And don't forget that show on December 30th. And hey, just get in your Gambit and check it out because he's playing all the time. Hey, we're going to move forward. I had a guy on just last month, and I never do this, but he's moving on. This Barstool Sports has become a phenomenon. I like to bring all the athletes and the coaches and all that, but sometimes you got to get people that know the facts. And Ben Mintz was on. He's an Ole Miss guy. He's from Monroe. He's lived in Shreveport, but he's been in New Orleans a minute, but he's moving to Chicago. And I saw him at Pascal Manali's last week, another New Orleans place. But my point is, when he said he's leaving, I said, I got to get him. So he's coming back. He's leaving this week, so he's coming back on today. We're going to talk some more LSU and what's going on and what prompted the move to get up to Chi-Town. Right next on Primetime. Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and like I said a second ago, we don't usually do this, but I'm bringing Ben Mintz back from Barstool Sports. because we kind of hinted that he might be going to Chicago. Now it's official. He's not just going to Chicago. If you're watching the replay on Friday, he's already gone. He's leaving on Thursday to get out, and right now it's Tuesday. But here he is again, the pride of Ole Miss, the pride of Monroe. He's lived in Shreveport. He's lived around, and he loves Louisiana, but he loves Mississippi too. How you been, bro?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me back. And the winds of change are blowing.
Right.
I signed I moved back to New Orleans in January, and I signed like a 3-year contract, and I was so pumped to get to do 3 years here. And now I'm moving in a little over 10 months. But life comes at you fast. I'm excited about it. And
well, tell us why.
Okay, so Barstool Sports went through, we'll call it a misunderstanding this summer. And when Dave Portnoy got Barstool back from Penn Gaming for $1, which is one of the craziest stories in business history, Dave sold Barstool.
How much?
He sold Barstool to Penn for $450 million, and he got it back for $1.
$450 million is a lot of money, right?
And then he got it back for $1.
Okay, that's good business, man.
Yeah, for him. And within 20 seconds of him announcing he got it back for $1, I was his first phone call to rehire me on August the 8th. And I got rehired by Dave, and I went to Chicago the next day to relink up with Big Cat and the boys. And I got to go on like a little recruiting visit. I got to feel like I was a 5-star recruit.
Yeah.
And I had Big Cat, who's one of the top guys in sports media in the world. He sits me down and he's like, look, here's the deal. I'm not telling you what to do with your life. I'll never do that. But we need you in Chicago. We're opening a ridiculous multi-million-dollar office in West Loop, and I think you'd be a fool for your career if you didn't come up here for it. However, your job's not on the line. If you don't want to do it, it's okay. And then Eric, our CEO, kind of said the same thing.
They made you an offer you couldn't refuse.
Yeah, but
it's like The Godfather. Let's be real.
They did. And it's like the second act stuff, and I just feel like I'd be a fool if I didn't go to Chicago.
What's your role at Barstool so people know? These are people that might not know who you are. What is your role there? What is Barstool exactly? Explain that.
Okay, so Barstool Sports, it just lives everywhere on the internet. So it's not on cable TV, but it's all over, Facebook, Instagram, my Twitter following.
It's worth $500 million.
Yeah.
$500 million. So that means it's something. It's out there.
Yeah, I'm at Stool Mintz on Instagram and Twitter. That's the best way to follow me. I also have a morning show, Wake Up Mintz, that's going to be coming back in December from the Chicago office. It's going to be 3 days a week, and it's a morning show unlike any other because it's just basically me with manic energy.
I'll listen to you, man. I mean, listen. Seriously, you never know what's coming out of your mouth, and it's usually good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We need to keep it always good moving forward. But so I'm going to have a morning show. We do a lot of gambling content. I'm on the gambling streams. And then I just kind of am like a sixth man role where I contribute to all kinds of stuff, whether it's ads or I get out to the South and promote Barstool, going to sporting events. I do poker content. I do fantasy football content. It's kind of a mixture of all things. But Big Cat kind of said this to me, too. I kind of feel like I'm like a six-man role at Barstool, and that's a great role to have. He can pull me in and throw me on anything, and I'm going to, do a solid enough job and bring positive energy. And so I was like, hey, that's a great role. So I'm going to try to blow up this morning show. That's going to be my big thing, and then just contribute to everything. And I told him, I was like, I'll move up here, but I got to be able to travel to the South still because I'm a Southern guy, as you mentioned. And he was like, that's cool. Whatever. And so you're going to see, like, I'm going to do a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning show, and I'm still going to be able to do some long weekends in the South. And so I'm still going to be around when it comes to Mardi Gras, Hawks of the Cause, Jazz Fest, Saints. I mean, I'm still going to be in New Orleans at least 6 to 8 weekends.
Well, we just had John Papa Gros on, and I mean, obviously you're a fan. I mean, it was obvious y'all were talking off set, and I love that you're packing in all the New Orleans stuff. You go into Clancy's as one of your last meals. I know I saw you at Pascal Manali's. This is the epitome of New Orleans. Maple Leaf, you said you just were there. So talk about what you're packing in before you're leaving.
Yeah, so the New Orleans thing, I lived here from 2009 to 2014, and I always wanted to come back because it didn't end well in 2014. I kind of, overdid it in my late 20s as I hit 30, like many have done before and after me.
You're not the first.
No. And I came back. So what's funny is I'm a big live music fan, and John Gros, I've been a fan of his for a long time. I was in Maple Leaf last night seeing George Porter. It was like I lived here for 8 months this year. I went to no Maple Leaf Mondays. I found out I was leaving, and I've gone to the last 4. So
it's phenomenal. And George Porter was a big part of our conversation. I don't know if you heard any of that off camera.
I believe it. He's great. And so I'm trying to pack in. I mean, I went and ate wings at Fat Harry's last night. watched some football and sports. I'm going to Clancy's to dinner tonight. But this is kind of one of those things. It's like not a real goodbye. Like even when I was in New York,
You're coming back a lot.
I'm here all the time, and I always will be here all the time because I just absolutely love New Orleans, the food, the music, sports, the culture,
home now, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And like I said, I lived here
even
for
more than Monroe now, maybe.
Yeah, I would
where
say
you
so.
grew up.
Yeah, I lived here. Like I said, I mean, I've spent over 5 years here. So.
Well, you make a living talking about sports and other things, but let's talk about sports. Let's talk about. Obviously, the SEC West is big conversation right now because LSU and Alabama both have a week off. And that is a big game. LSU's got 2 losses, but only 1 in conference to Ole Miss, which is the team wearing your shirt. So Alabama obviously has, their loss, but not in conference.
No, it's to Texas, yeah.
And it's to Texas. So why don't you break it down what's happening right now at the top of the SEC West?
Okay, so when you look at the West right now, the key for Bama, they lost early non-conference, as you mentioned. And that second half, I will say this. They were down, Bama was down 20 to 7.5. My biggest bet last week was Bama -9. I had 3 units on it. At halftime, it was 27. I was like, they're done. They came out and war machined in Tennessee in that second half. They outscored them 27-0.
Tennessee was up 13-0.
Yeah, and 20 to 7.5. And Bama, that was the best half they played all season. You know, Milroe, he's not consistent throwing the ball, but he is getting better, pushing the ball down the field.
He's gotten better for sure.
He can move. They have a good defense. But I think this is the real story right now is what's going on with LSU. I don't think, everybody knows about the struggles on defense. I thought bringing Pete Jenkins back to coach the D-line was brilliant. When you look
paid off so far.
Yeah, just look at his history though, and with Louisiana, and he's such a good D-line coach. But I think this reminds me of 2019. This LSU offense, I mean, obviously they're not undefeated, but this offense is on that level. You're talking about scoring 49, 49, and 48 against Auburn, at Missouri, and Ole Miss. All 3, I'm not saying all 3 have top 10 defenses in America, but all 3 defenses are pretty good, at least. They're going to score on everybody. Jaden Daniels, you look at how much he's progressed. Last year, when you watched him play, he would drop back, he would look at his one receiver, and he'd start running. Now he drops back, 3rd progression, 4th progression, pocket awareness. He steps up, then he runs. He has come so
He's a viable
far.
NFL quarterback.
Yeah, he's come so far. It reminds me of what happened with Burrow from year 1 to year 2, actually.
100%.
And, I think Joe Sloan, the LSU quarterback's coach, former Louisiana Tech OC, deserves a ton of credit for the job he's done.
I agree.
He's done with Jaden. But the offense is on that level, but I think the defense isn't going to be great. Obviously, everybody knows how bad it's been, but I think it's gotten better. And it doesn't have to be great, because if you're scoring the high 40s every week, just hold them to 28 or 31.
Yeah, don't give up 50, right?
Yeah, and so I think LSU is really humming right now, and I think they're going to Alabama, and they're going to win that football game.
They're below the radar nationally, right? Because everybody's like 2 losses, you're out. It's like, and that a lot of times is the case, but they happen to play in the Southeastern Conference, and that's the thing. You can strengthen your strength of schedule, with the people who vote and all that by winning games in that conference. And since you lost 2 close games, I mean,
against top 5 Florida State and top 12 Ole Miss on the road, neither loss or bad.
Florida State wasn't that close at the end.
No, that was bad.
But they were leading late in the 3rd quarter. That's my point. They were still winning in the game, and they ended up just getting blown out at the end. But the fact is Ole Miss could have gone either way.
Oh, no doubt.
We know that. So,
no doubt about it.
And you lose early in the year, it's a lot better than losing late. So the fact is they have a chance to move forward.
Oh, yeah, and Jaden Daniels is top 3 in the Heisman conversation right now, too. Caleb Williams is obviously falling off of their couple of losses, and Michael Penix had kind of his worst game, even though they won last week ugly against Arizona State. But look, if I'm an LSU fan, it's all in front of you.
Right.
Look, you go to Alabama, you win. The thing is with Ole Miss, Ole Miss has to go to Georgia. I mean, obviously, I hope Ole Miss could win, but, I mean, you can't count on winning at Athens.
So that's the fact. Just so everybody knows. Ole Miss has to lose to Georgia for sure.
But it's in Athens, and Georgia hadn't lost. Look, I hope Ole Miss wins, obviously, but
Ole Miss has a chance.
Of course, they play the game for a reason, and Ole Miss's defense has improved a ton. But there's a great path if you go beat Alabama, if you're LSU, and win out.
You don't crap the bet against Texas A&M again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a great path for LSU to get back to Atlanta, and then you look at a 2-loss LSU, if they beat Georgia and Atlanta, if you beat Georgia, win at Alabama, I mean, you're going to get in the playoff.
Right,
I mean,
that's the thing.
It just is what it is.
Next year, this would be moot. I said this in Fletcher's segment because there's 12 teams. But this is the last year they have 4, and this is what we're playing. But they had just 2 teams, and LSU had 2 losses that year. They lost Kentucky and Arkansas. in overtime. They were undefeated in regulation, as Les Miles would say. But the fact is, they won a national championship that year, and nobody even remembers the 2 losses. So it's a possibility. You don't want to put the cart before the horse. But the rest of the country, how do you see things shake out?
Well, what's interesting right now with the rest of the country, when you look at the playoff situation, whoever wins the Big Ten, Michigan or Ohio State's getting in, no matter what. One of those two is a playoff spot. Now that Penn State once again choked in a big game, which has been the story of the entire Franklin era. So you're looking at a 14 playoff. Michigan or Ohio State's going to get in. Florida State, if they win out, they're in. I mean, they're in a spot with the LSU win. Obviously we'll see if they win out, but I think there's a great chance.
I think you're going
to see them.
And they're legitimate. Florida State's legitimate. Let's be honest.
Yeah. See, Texas is now falling off with the Oklahoma loss and Quinn Ewers being out for a week, 6 weeks.
I just did Texas game this week.
Yeah, I know. Houston money line 13-1. Oh, that third down stuff.
It was so close.
Yeah. Anyway, my
forward.
bad. Get it onward. But regardless, Oklahoma has a shot, but I don't know if they can get through undefeated. They look a little, I don't think they're that good. And then the Pac-12 could cannibalize itself.
They have been doing it.
I mean, as they're going to continue to do. I do think Washington's very good, but we'll see. So I feel like
I've got Washington this weekend.
Okay.
I've got Washington at Stanford.
Okay.
And so I'll get a first-hand view of Michael Penix, and I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, it was weird seeing them struggle last week, but it was kind of a letdown spot off the big organ. Yeah, no, that happens. And that's what got North Carolina too. But I think you're looking at Big Ten champ, SEC champ, Florida State, and then one other, whether it's Oklahoma or the Pac-12 champ.
Or the loser of Georgia, say if LSU could beat Georgia, that's a possibility. Or maybe Michigan and Ohio State. That other team could possibly get in. There's a lot of scenarios rolling here because they want to take the best team, not just the team that wins the conference like it's going to be next year where you have to have won a conference, and then they start taking the other, the at-large people.
The one wild card situation that I think is interesting, and it's a very big wild card, but what if Ole Miss goes to Georgia and wins, and they go 11-1, but they don't get to Atlanta because Bama has the tiebreaker on them? Like, what is an 11-1 Ole Miss with the win at Georgia, but that doesn't go to Atlanta? What do you do there?
If they're ranked.
If they win at Georgia, though.
And then you have some losses in championship games, right?
Yeah.
Like say Washington's undefeated, but they lose to say Utah or somebody in that championship, or whoever it may be. The big, if Ohio State gets there and then they lose to whoever's on the other side, there's possibilities.
Yeah, it's wild to even be having that conversation.
See, that's why I wish this year was next year.
Me too.
Because Ole Miss would be a definite there. Hey, man, I want to thank you. Good luck in Chicago.
Oh, of course, man.
This is Taz Performance. This is your last parting gift out of New Orleans.
Oh, man. Looks awesome.
This is the new Navy, and this is a beautiful new Navy. The other one's a little dark.
Good slimming color.
A little darker than that one, and I like that. It's a nice color.
Yeah, I love it, man. I got a whole new wardrobe with these XLs. I got I'm running the St. Jude half marathon in December 2nd.
Congratulations,
in Memphis.
man.
Yeah, I got a lot of good things going.
You got 10 seconds. Any parting thing?
Man, I just love New Orleans, and this ain't goodbye. I mean, y'all are still going to see me a ton. I'm always going to do whatever I can to put the national platform I have from Barstool on the city to support the restaurants, music, and culture. And anybody that meets me in public, please say hello. I always love it.
Ben loves it. Hey, by the way, I was out with him. People recognize him, and he loves to talk. So come up. He's approachable. Come say hello, whether he's in town. And follow him on Barstool Mintzy. It's a good follow. You'll enjoy that one. Hey, I want to thank Will and Danielle. And, of course, Logan and Alex and Jim and Ron, everybody here at WLAE. I'm very thankful to be here. I want to thank everybody here. And also, we got some big shows to close the year, and I can't wait. And like he said, we're cultural, too. We got musicians coming up. We got, of course, a lot of athletes and coaches as well. So come back next week right here on Primetime Sports.